Something's Wrong by RDM Faith Clips. Category: My Hero Academia. Pairings: Midoriya, Izuku, and Midoriya, Hisashi. Midoriya, Izuku, and Class 1A. Midoriya, Izuku, and Aizawa, Shouta. Midoriya, Izuku, and Original Character. Rating: Team. Summary: 3 people that weren't a part of the UA staff came into Class 1A dorms without an escort, specifically asking to speak to Midoriya. It was a brief moment, but Iida saw the way Midoriya's eyes held fear in them. Bakugo knew the way that Midoriya's hands shook was because he felt endangered, that he had no way to protect himself. Todoroki was familiar with the way Midoriya's body had tensed as his own body did the same for when Endeavor called him home. He didn't want to go with them. Momo knew the rules and regulations of all of UA, and these people had no right to be on campus. Shouji had overheard the 3 talking earlier about they let a villain like him slip by, and was ready to throw them out of a window. Tokoyami and Dark Shadow were ready to stand guard even against their own idols. And Urakara was ready to let out a war cry before charging at them. Midoriya went with them, and it was as soon as the door closed that Aoyama was on the phone calling Aizawa, while Asui had started to plan on how they were going to get their classmate back. Disclaimer: neither I nor the writer of this fanfic own any rights to the My Hero Academia franchise, and this is a slightly sad story. Story begins. Class 1A had been through a lot since they've started the new chapter in their lives on becoming heroes at UA. They have become a strong bonded family with additions and 1 removal. The removal was done voluntarily by one Minoru Muneta, who had started to take online business classes from UA. As his parents' divorce finalized, his mother asked this from UA. Mineta, as she had enrolled him in therapy to help her son learn that his father's toxic attitude and mentality is not how females are to be treated or viewed. For now, his spot will forever be open to him. The additions first started with the heroic student replacement of Mineta, a general education transfer student known by the name of Hitoshi Shinso. He was followed by his adopted little sister Eri, who was a little girl with 4 of their originals had saved from the Yakuza. The current big 3 of UA, Mirio Togata, Nejire Hado, and Amajiki Tamaki, joined soon after because of so many of their own being skilled at quirkless fighting that they came down to the class to train in support of Togata after losing his quirk in the same raid that they rescued Eri in. The final addition was the general education homeroom teacher, the English language teacher, the pops of Hitoshi and Eri, and the husband of their own homeroom teacher, who is one of their own, Present Mike, or known outside of the hero costume, Hisashi Yamada. It was because they were such a big family and they were dedicated 1 day a week, where the original Class 1A students minus Mineta spent the day together, with no training planned. It was a designated rest day, where they would work on homework together, play games together, or do their hobbies with the comfort of their family around them. This was the day that the big three spent time with their own class, and the Aizawa Yamada family spent the day together because nothing was more important than family. This will also provide memories for Eri to know what a good family is and how well she is loved by those around her. Today was a peaceful day until the three unknown people walked into the Class 1A dormitory common room with no alarms going off and without an escort. Two of them wore matching black uniforms like they were a part of some secret service agency. They even had a weird insignia that looked similar to the HPSC on their breast pocket. They stood on either side of a woman who was smaller than the two agents. Her black hair was styled in a perfect romantic tuck without a single hair out of place. A black feathered eye mask with ruby eye slots for her to see but no one could see her eyes. A black dress had a yellow buckle around her lithe waist, which also served a purpose for holding a sheath that carried a sword. Her hands were crossed at the wrists in front of her, just slightly lower than the buckle. Sheer black nylons covered her legs and went into her black knee-high boots, leaving only her arms to be barred if it wasn't for the black feathers that went up them. "Please pardon our intrusion," the female said as everyone stared at them, seeing who would make the first move. "Izuku, Midoriya, may we talk to you in a private room alone? I have heard that UA has many conference rooms that we could potentially use for our talk. Would one of them be preferable to you?" Her voice was clear, crisp, no sign of emotions, everything that was professional would be, but Class 1A could tell that while she had left it open for Midoriya to potentially deny her, he really had no choice but to follow her. There was a spy in the force, someone who was leaking information to the gang they were investigating for drug trafficking. The raid would have ended with more casualties for the heroes if it wasn't for the guiding light hero who did his best to hold the ceiling up while they escaped. The gang they were investigating had tried to blow the building up to make their escape, but they didn't account for the hero's fireproof ability. He took a majority of the blast and pulled out his huge dragonic wings, which blocked much of the debris from hitting his comrades. The wings being so close to the blast and blocking the debris left them severely damaged and broken to the point that he could not pull them back to being tucked against his body or to get through the exit. Even as his arms shook from under the weight of the ceiling, he didn't collapse until the last hero had gone through the exit. As the ceiling crushed the guiding light hero, his wings kept a little of the pressure off for a bit. He pulled out a golden pocket watch that had an emerald-colored outline carved onto it of an adult dragon curled protectively around a baby dragon. He opened the pocket watch as tears fell down his emerald-scaled face, the second hand ticking away across the carved Roman numerals that had a bit of a curve. But as he was more focused on the other side of the watch, where two pictures were kept. One was the dragon hero holding onto a blue baby blanket with green hair sticking out of it. The other picture was more recent. It showed the dragon hero standing on an unknown white sandy beach next to a 16-year-old. boy with green curly hair, bright emerald eyes, and a huge smile on his freckle-covered face. They both had their hand in an arched shape and placed together to form a heart. The dragon moved to hold the pocket watch close to his chest. As his eyes closed and his green-scaled tail gave one more wag for the last time. 3 people that weren't a part of UA came into the Class 1A dorms without an escort, specifically asking to speak to Midoriya were signs of trouble. The class was getting into subtle positions for battle, but Midoriya stood up from his spot on the floor and faced the 3 strangers. He took a deep breath and nodded to the female. "Of course, madame," Midoriya said. "Please lead the way." "Wait, Midoriya," Kirishima said, grabbing his shoulder. "It's okay, everyone," Midoriya said, nudging Kirishima's hand off gently. "I'm sure it's nothing." It was for a brief moment but Iida saw the way that Midoriya's eyes held fear in them. Jiro heard the way Midoriya's voice shook with just a little. Kota saw the way Midoriya's bottom lip trembled. Bakugo knew the way that Midoriya's own hands were shaking as they formed into fists, was because he felt like he was endangered, and Kirishima saw the way Midoriya's smile didn't fully reach his eyes. Todoroki was familiar with the way Midoriya's body had tensed up, as it was the same way his own body tensed up whenever his father called him home to train. Midoriya did not want to go with them. Momo knew all of the rules and regulations of UA, students, staff, and visitors, and so she knew that without a UA staff member, they had no right to be on campus grounds, let alone speak to one of them without a guardian, so why wasn't the alarms going off? Sato was already in the kitchen, so no one was focusing on him, slowly moving the sugar closer to him in case he needed to use it to keep the intruder pinned down. Shouji had overheard them talking earlier when he had the assumption of a teacher with them in the elevator, when they said something about how that a villain like him slipped by, which caused him to bare his teeth in a snarl under his mask, with his muscles tense and ready to throw them out the window. Hagakure stood up and reached out to grab Midoriya's hand. She gave it a gentle squeeze, and when he didn't squeeze back as confidently or comfortably like he usually does, she about cried. Ojiro wanted to wrap his tail around Midoriya and pull him back. Dark Shadow had come out once they saw the female, and was excited, but now Tokoyami and Dark Shadow were now ready to stand guard for Midoriya, even if it was against one of their idols, and Urakara was ready to lunge at the 3 of them with a battle cry at the tip of her tongue. "Excuse me, but you have no right to be here," Sarah said, "unless our teacher is here, and he's not. Besides, you haven't shown us any identification," Kaminari said, flickering some lightning out. "How do we know you aren't villains kidnapping Midoriya?" The female moved her head, but with the way her face mask was set up, no one could tell where her focus was before she went back to Midoriya. "You have good friends here," she said. "Yeah," Midoriya said, looking at his classmates. "His friends, his family. They're the best." She nodded. "I'm glad," she said. "Let's go." Mina saw the way that Midoriya was holding back his tears for their sake, and with a nod from her, Aoyama had a button pressed on his phone. As soon as the door was closed, Asui had started to make a plan. "Hello, Aoyama," a voice said on the line. "Aizawa-sensei, we have a situation," Aoyama said. "In every country, the pro-heroes must follow their Hero Public Safety Commission laws, HPSC. But the federal government of the country will always have the higher power, even over the HPSC. If at any time the federal government feels like their HPSC isn't being transparent, overstepping the federal law, or abusing their powers, they will contact the International Hero Public Safety Commission, IHPSC. The IHPSC has 3 levels within their systems. The first level are the heroes that investigate, save, and arrest villains and criminals that are involved with international crimes. These heroes are scouted when they are in the university level, but they are scrutinized to the very core for the first 5 years of them being a pro. Some are even longer before they are even offered a job. The second level are the heroes from the first that have moved up in positions that want to continue investigating, but only a different hero that the country's HPSC and any upcoming recruits that look promising. They create a list of who or what needs to be investigated and dealt with next, and offer it up to the third level of the IHPSC, which is mainly the president of the IHPSC and the vice president of the IHPSC. Those 2 positions in the IHPSC had worked their way up from the first 2 levels, and now they make the tough visits to families of heroes that lost their lives in the line of action. Within the IHPSC, they make the final decisions on recruits. They organize what heroes will go to what missions, and what heroes within their nation will work together. They are the heroes that will go to a nation and investigate personally if a nation's HPSC seems to keep giving them false information, avoiding their inquiries, and keep denying them from seeing something. These heroes are the heroes who have the highest level of power and works closely with the international government. These heroes are the ones that no one ever wants to see, but the one thing about these heroes that terrify the HPSC is that they don't have to follow the rules or regulations or laws except for introducing themselves to the proper party and why they are there. Their hero licenses will override all sorts of safety protocols, allowing them to have access to any locked room of a building that deals with heroes. All the information that was edited, natural, or deleted will be available to them, no matter the passcode or clearance level. Any information that was supposed to be hidden from the investigations or kept quiet was available to the president and vice president of the IHPSC. Nothing was safe from them. They did not like what they found in Japan, and the IHPSC was going to be staying there for a while, cleaning house and fixing the mess of society that was Japan. Japan was going to be a symbol for the world, and not in the way that it wanted to be. Shouta Aizawa was running into the UA school. He received the call from Aoyama, and it won't ever even be over his dead body before someone from the HPSC questioned his students, without him there. He will be there as a ghost if he has to, especially when it comes to his problem child. He knows that When he left the house, his son was getting ready to make his way to the dorms to be involved in the rescuing plan, and his husband was calling Nedzu to let him know about a break-in and to find their location. His phone rang, and with a brief glance, he saw what room Midoriya was in. He used his capture weapon to help him turn the corridors, and he finally came into view of the conference room that was being used, as he saw the two agents standing in front of the door. "Who are you?" One of the agents said. "Halt, you cannot enter," the other said. Aizawa grabbed both agents with his capture scarf, and threw them away from the door. He activated his quirk, and he launched himself at the two agents. He slammed his foot into one of their faces before turning around as the other agent stood back up. Aizawa grabbed the back of the agent's head and slammed it into the wall. "I am your worst nightmare, and just watch me," Aizawa said with a feral growl. "Because there is no way in hell am I letting someone from the HPSC question one of my kids without me being there." The guiding light hero was one of the best heroes that appeared in America. He flew through the hero rankings with his need to save everyone, and to those he couldn't save, he provided his condolences and the closure himself. He kept his name out of the media, not for his safety, but for the safety of his son. Even after being the IHPSC's president, he worked on all three levels of the IHPSC, getting to know everyone under him. Everyone loved him, and he brought his son to the agency one day, and it didn't take long to see why. His son quickly found himself to be a treasure amongst the IHPSC because of his general love of heroes and how they were all amazing in his eyes. They soon found out about his quirk analysis, and that was done on the spot. He knew which hero quirks, or quirks in general, would work best against the criminals' quirks, how to cover their weaknesses and be better heroes. Soon the IHPSC had the youngest hero in their system that had never set foot in battle, let alone finish middle school. They always asked for their analysis, even when he had to go back to Japan to start school again. The latest mission of the guiding light hero was and had found that he didn't trust one of the local heroes on the case. There was no evidence to explain why it was, just his gut instinct, so he couldn't really take the hero off without a good reason. It was supposed to be an easy mission. Before the IHPSC, working on cleaning up Japan's corruption, started with cleaning the HPSC staff from the president to the janitors, abolishing every law the HPSC made that overstated the federal government's power, reteaching Japan's views about quirks and quirkless. On endeavor on every school district that focused on the so-called heroic quirks, orphanages, foster parents, businesses that discriminated against quirks and quirkless. They planned on getting rid of the false information over the double toe joints, how much of the world is actually quirkless, shaming hospitals that no longer stood by oath to heal everyone, no matter the situation, to the news medias that thought it was appropriate to question students without their guardians' consent, to leak videos of their fights, to blaming schools for them getting attacked, when it was the media who causes the attacks because they broke the international laws that protected all limelight heroes because they didn't keep their personal lives separate. The guiding light hero planned on using Japan as a reminder to the world that federal government still held the power of over the HPSC, should still be heard. that quirks aren't everything, and how dare they shame someone for something they can't control. Not that no one is a Deku, or useless, or a villain because of a quirk or lack thereof, and that the IHPSC is always there to remind people that they are the last resort and final defense of federal government for a reason. The Vice President, now acting President, is making this her first official mission, in order to honor the late President, her colleague, her partner, her best friend, and to help protect his son. However, before she could do that, she had to bring the bad news to his son. She also had to give him something that she knows he would want his son to keep with him. The Guiding Light hero was one of the best heroes that appeared in America. Oh wait, I already read this. Aizawa knew the two agents wouldn't be getting up soon. Well, that is what he thought. No sooner did he slam the door open was he tackled to the ground, his arms pinned behind his back and a knee on his tailbone. Blood was rushing to his ears as he heard the heart-breaking, gut-wrenching whys coming from Midoriya. He lifted his head to snarl at the mysterious female that Aoyama told him about, only to get his head slammed into the ground. "Let me go," Aizawa said. "You have no right to talk to any of my students, my kids, without a legal guardian." "Smith, release him," the female said. "Madam President, he's the famous Eraserhead, and honestly, it would be a shame not to meet the hero," the female said. Aizawa felt the pressure leave his head and back. He stood up quickly, with anger activating his quirk. He side-eyed the two agents and felt satisfaction over the fact he gave both agents a broken nose before he focused on the female. Her black feathers were puffed out now as she stared at him through her mask. She was holding on to Midoriya while they were both on their knees. Silent tears were going down her face. One of her hands were pressing against Midoriya's back. Her other hand had its fingers intertwined in his hair, pressing it down against her shoulder. Aizawa's fury grew as he could see the curls shaking with every choked out "why." His student shouted against her shoulder, the way his body was slightly hunched over and holding on to something precious that Aizawa could see a part of, the gold chain dangling in between Midoriya's fingers. "What the hell did you do to Midoriya?" Aizawa said, taking steps closer to his student and trying to restrain the urge of just grabbing his problem child and pulling him away from this lady. I can't accept this," Midoriya said in between his sobs and hiccups. "He loved Izuku," Madam President said gently, her voice adding a little coo at the end of it. "He would want you to have it. He loved that pocket watch because you gave it to him. He cherished it." Aizawa watched as she removed her hand from his hair and placed two fingers under his chin to tilt Midoriya's head up to look at her. He snuffled a little hiccup as a hiccup escaped. "I know that he would want you to have it, just so you could feel him still by your side, protecting you. Besides, we know how much Torch loved and admired UA Class 1A, including their homeroom teacher," she said. "I'm sure he would have been excited like an overgrown puppy if he received a notebook of their signatures from you." A wet laugh mixed with a sob came from Midoriya as he wiped his eyes with one of his hands still clutching on to something close to his chest. "Yeah, he would. And he would brag about each one for days, just if they were his own, Midoriya said. He pulled back from the female, her hand leaving his back with ease, and his hand going back to clutching the chained object. Are you going to lead your reign with the mission he wanted to do next? Yes. However, I do wish it was Torch leading it, and not me. I mostly focused on how to tell you that I haven't had time to go through all his notes, and I'm guessing you have ideas for who would be allies and people to look out for. Absolutely not, Aizawa said, moving towards the student and placing a hand on his shoulder. The anger was already past boiling, but it bubbled over when he felt the way Midoriya's body just collapsed from exhaustion against his chest. Whatever this mission is, you will not be asking my student about it until you tell me everything. Sir, that is confidential, one of the agents said. And Midoriya is a minor, a child, Aizawa said, snapping at the agents. The three of you have already broken enough laws, too. It was a slight nod from Midoriya that Aizawa felt against his chest that caused him to stop. He watched the female nod back to Midoriya. My name is Nevermore, the Raven Hero from Austria. The female said as she stood up. As of a week ago, the guiding light hero, Torch, that came from America died in the line of action. He was the International Hero Public Safety Commission's president. His death has caused me to step up and become the acting president of the IHBSC. As such, with my former title, rules and regulations, restrictions, and laws don't apply to me. One of my duties is to tell the families of our fallen heroes about their loved ones falling in battle. So I had to tell Izuku about his father's death during a raid and how there was a mole within the team. She turned her attention back to Midoriya. Now Athens. Who should I have as Now Athens. Who should I have as allies, and who should I watch out for? The day of Torch's funeral was the day the world cried. Torch had stopped a total of 35 drug rings, 30 human trafficking rings, and saved over 15,000 children, saved at least 25,000 civilians and heroes, found over 200 billion USD worth of illegal drugs. He made such an impact on the world that when Nevermore announced she was going to continue Torch's agenda and fix Japan that was a lot more crocus and corrupted than she originally thought, nations had volunteered some of their own heroes and personnel to help. While support came to Nevermore and Japan's aid, it was with a heavy heart and a guiding hand that two things were placed inside of Torch's coffin. One was a picture of his teenage son that was surrounded by his classmates, by family, in the UA pool, playing volleyball while their teacher watched from the sidelines, slurping a jelly pouch. The other was a notebook that had everyone in Class 1A's hero signature in it, with the promise of looking out for Torch's son, and being the best hero that he knew they could be. Aizawa looked upon his new son with proud but heartbreaking eyes as he slept. It was a surprise to know that Midoriya could already push his emotions to the side when the mission called for it, or to use his emotions to help push him forwards. Principal was to be a major ally to Nevermore. Not with just tearing down Japan's HPSC, which is what he's been waiting to do, but with his high-specs quirk. helping him comb through all of the information and finding everything illegal in their databases. Alongside Centipeter and the former Ingenium hero, Detective Sukiachi and Detective Sansa were cleared from all of their police duties to be at Nevermore's side, while questioning took place with help of foreign officials. Hound Dog and other psychologists from around the world were requested to listen to the LOV, as Shigaraki, Dabi, and Twice were to be claimed as more allies and outspoken voices of how corrupt Japan's HPSC became. Mirako was to be one of Nevermore's bodyguards. Aizawa was surprised to hear from Midoriya that Hawks would most likely be an enemy, as the HPSC controls him and his actions. But at this point, with how drowsy and exhausted Midoriya was, he just wanted his problem child to get some rest and turn off the world. He was also surprised that Midoriya was already an international hero. But again, today has just been surprise after surprise. Sho, his husband, whispered, coming into the living room. "Is everything okay with the little listener?" Aizawa looked at his husband, who was also listed as an ally because of his radio station. The information can wait until Nevermore tells him directly. He looked back at his student. "The lady that came to retrieve Midoriya from the dorms is the acting president of the IHPSC, Zashi," Aizawa said. "She came to tell Midoriya that his father was killed in the line of duty." "No. The poor green bean," his student said. "He lost his mother earlier this year, and now his father. I'm guessing the reason why his father was never on his file was because he was an international hero." "Zashi. His father was the former IHPSC president. The reason why she's now the acting president," Aizawa said. He ran his fingers through Midoriya's hair. "She asked if we could adopt him, Zashi." Black eyes looked into green ones. "Now, how could I say no when it comes to the problem child, Zashi? Especially since I was his father's favorite hero, and that I am just as protective of all my students. They're your children. My students, as a dragon dad, is of their fluffy minty boy." That is the end of Something's Wrong by RDM Fave Clips. I apologize for the random cuts offs and startups again, because it's daytime for once. And sometimes I don't like the music that's playing in the background, or I'm not completely alone, such as my parents coming home or my sister being a brat. Have a great night.